Welcome to the Homeschool Together podcast. Where one working mom and a stay-at-home dad help you navigate the nuts and bolts of the growing and dynamic world of homeschooling.
With a focus on early learners, like me.
All the ins and outs of building and maintaining your homeschool life.
Homeschool.
Find out tips and tricks to make things like this easier.
I'm reading.
And ultimately, enjoy educating your kids. And what's that last thing?
Have fun together. Did I do good, Daddy?
Yeah, you did, sweetie. Good job. Hello and welcome back to Homeschool Together. Thank you for joining us. If you have a chance, do us a favor and leave us a review on iTunes. I would greatly appreciate it. We are continuing with our whole theme this month, which is writing. And we're trying to tackle writing, understand the various problems and issues. And today we're going to be talking about the encouraging writing. And we had Jeannie on last week to kind of kick off this month.
Yeah, she gave some great advice.
Wonderful advice, and she had some really cool ideas in there. Today we're going to be talking on going deeper into that. And we understand that motivation and encouragement around writing is challenging. And we know that is kind of the very often the sticking point with a lot of us is, oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah, my kid, I want to teach them how to read. And that sounds great, Matt and Ariel. But they don't want to write.
Yeah, they don't want to write.
They don't want to do it. And
we struggle with this too. So
Absolutely.
What we wanted to focus on, Jeannie gave us just a great foundation about how to think about writing. And what we wanted to do today was give lots of examples of some common problems that you might have and some ideas that we have that you might want to try. Every child is different. Every problem is different. But we wanted to give you lots of ideas in case you hit some stumbling blocks as you're trying to get your, young writers started, or, if you've got a middle school or even a high school writer out there, this is, I think a lot of these are generally applicable and just, give you some different ideas.
So before we get into some of the ideas to encourage it, let's talk about some problems that, we may run into. First one being lack of interest. I mean, this is probably one of the biggest ones that we see.
Right. Yeah. I think this is most of it. Like writing is tedious. This is not fun. I don't want to do this. It's boring.
It's not enjoyable. You're asking me to write about,
it's hard, right?
Paint drying. Yeah. No, it's very difficult. And I think this is true no matter where the kid is. I mean, whether you're in, elementary in a public school, you're in college, whatever it might be, there's always this lack of interest where, oh, I've got to write a 5-page paper on blah, 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 or I got to write 2,000 words. Like,
I don't want to do
do
that.
this. Anyway, so we've all been there. Like we all know.
Right. When push comes to shove, you have to do it. But what we're trying to do, especially since we're homeschooling, doing things differently, is trying to make sure that they do have interest in writing, that they do want to do it. We aren't draconian pushing it down on them. Thou must write. So you can really see how like this lack of interest is something that in school, they really don't have to overcome. They just say, do it.
Yeah.
And at home, we want to take some different approaches.
Absolutely. Next thing is maybe some anxiety around writing. They feel some pressure.
Our daughter has this.
Yes.
She has this pressure to write perfectly, and she feels a lot of anxiety about that. She feels like, she's worried about what we're going to think about her writing, and
like
she's not willing to do it.
There's a judgment element. Like I'm going to be upset. Like today, she wrote a really cute note for you. And then she wrote one for her sister as well. And they gave it to us like, I love you, Mommy and Daddy. You're so amazing. That's right, guys. We were gushing today over 3x5 index cards. But,
and you can see when she hands us that, she has like this hesitation moment.
Yep.
And I'm looking at it and there's all kinds of spelling mistakes, right?
And grammar's pretty decent.
It's not terrible, but there's all kinds of mistakes in it. Oh, yeah. And I'm like, thank you so much. You spent a lot of time working on this. I can tell. It means a lot to me. And she just beamed, right? She's just now in second grade. We'll work on the spelling. It's okay. but that anxiety, it was right there as she was handing it over. Like, what are they going to say?
Yeah, the perfection element too is a big problem. And I think that scales all the way through all of our lives, right? That's the imposter syndrome. I know authors left, right, and center that are terrified to hit the publish button.
Right. They don't want anyone to read their work.
They're afraid that somebody's not going to like it. That's true about anything. I'm reading Pulitzer Prize winning biography right now, and there are 1-star reviews on that. People didn't like it.
Right.
It's just like
it won the Pulitzer.
So, that writing anxiety, I think, is always going to be there, and we should always be aware of it. And And I don't think it ever goes away. It's just you manage it better.
Right.
I know there are big time authors who are still terrified when they have to start doing those press tours for that new book, because there's always that opportunity, the possibility that nobody's going to like it.
Well, I think that's that way with any creative professional, right? I mean, that's something we always worry about, is
on the
that
podcast, right?
somebody is going to absolutely hate something that we've done. You know, you put your heart into something, and especially when you write, and you write books, and the countless hours you spend writing them, and then you're like, is my wife going to hate this?
And it's almost always
Is she going to have nightmares from this? Usually.
She always loves them, except she doesn't want to read them anymore.
Right. But you spend so much time, you put your heart into something, and then it's hard to get that criticism and feedback. So it's
Absolutely.
totally understandable.
Another problem that we see maybe with the younger readers is that they kind of have, younger writers, is that kind of have a limited vocabulary.
Right. Yeah. They don't know how to fully express themselves because they can't find the right words.
Or maybe they have
or they
the
can't
words
spell the right words.
They have them in their head and they just don't know how to get them down onto the page. And I totally understand that. I see my daughter when she tries to write a sentence, say in the Explode the Code, and she's trying to write it and she knows, she says the sentence. I'm like, yeah, it's a great sentence. You go ahead and try to write it. She goes, I don't know how to say that word. I don't know how to spell that word.
Right.
And she'll immediately try to dumb it down. I'm like, no, give it a try. It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah, I think spelling and grammar are huge pieces, right? They go with this. It's the vocab to express themselves fully. And then how do I spell it? Do I have my punctuation or that? A lot of times with grammar, the kids they'll write it down and then they'll say, I know that's not right, because they can hear that the grammar is wrong, but they don't know why, and then they're just frustrated and unhappy with their writing.
Exactly, yeah. Next part is sometimes with the writing comes the issue of handwriting, and the skill, and then it's really it's hard to understand how difficult and how fine handwriting is, like to write out words and to write quickly and to write quickly legibly.
Right. Sometimes it takes forever. By the time our daughter finishes a few words, she's like, I don't even know what I was saying.
Yeah.
Right. That's the same way you get into with early readers when they just, they're just sounding out every letter. They sound out like 3 words and then they get to the end of the sentence and they don't even know what they read.
I don't know what I read.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that with handwriting. It takes a lot of stamina to get used to using your pen and making it do what you want it to do and not getting hand cramps and things.
Yeah. It's kind of funny with the handwriting. It's kind of a skill where you're going to go at a certain speed so it's legible, and that's always going to be slower than what you're thinking, and then you have to learn this weird skill of writing as if like you're buffering words in, but you're thinking ahead, and so you're just buffering words like it's an MP3 player where it's like buffering out to Bluetooth headphones or something. It's your mind is working faster than your hand, and it's hard to get comfortable with that and allow that process to happen. Because I remember we used to write in the composition books for history class or whatever it might be, and writing those essays, you're thinking faster than you're writing, and to be comfortable with that, I think is a big time skill to learn.
Well, it's true. And I think for kids with their stamina, they've got these big ideas, big stories they want to tell. Then they get started writing them and like, oh man, this is hard.
This is really
now
hard.
They're going to try to edit themselves down. I remember with our daughter, she was writing pen pal letters to a couple of pen pals overseas. And
she regretted writing those long letters.
Oh, yeah. She told me what she wanted to say, and I went ahead and typed it onto Google Docs, nice and big for her on the computer screen. And she's like, okay, hi. So I did in the summer. She's writing this. And I'm like, okay, you might want to be more concise. She's like, no, I got to tell her about this. By the end of it, it was like 2 pages of typed. Big old letters. We're not talking about crazy. But I said, okay, now it's time for you to go ahead and write that to your pen pal. And she was like, oh.
Could I just hit print? I remember
she was really bummed.
When she was at the end of the second one, she was like, I am never writing another long letter ever again.
Yeah, she was, and I felt bad because I wanted her to get the practice of writing to her pen pal, and they had written to her, so I didn't want to type a letter back. I really wanted her to write, and she did fine with it, but she definitely, I could see where she really would have said more if it weren't for the handwriting stamina.
Exactly. Next thing is organization and structure. It can be daunting to kind of organize your thoughts in a coherent manner. I know with like my daughter, when we're doing, if you're following us on YouTube, with our ancient history study with Build Your Library, we're talking a lot about doing writing prompts with our daughter to kind of get her mind thinking about what was life, or tell a story in a set in that time, for using everything that she's learned for the week, and then really engaging with that material. I see when she's writing the stories, when she's dictating the stories to me, they are very like one sentence. And then she thinks, okay, then I'm going to write this sentence and everything. I don't think she has the entire story in her head. And bringing together and organizing those thoughts can be very difficult, especially for an early writer.
Well, I think at the early stage, she's not quite sure. They're not quite sure what they want to say.
And they may not even know what they're supposed to do. Like they're maybe confused.
Right. Where am I supposed to go with this?
Like what are my, they may be looking at us and saying, what are my parents expecting me to do here?
And for those older students where you're saying, hey, write a 3-paragraph, essay on this thing or something and give it a beginning, middle, end or whatever, they may be really struggling with how to take all the thoughts that they have and figure out how to organize those. And that's something that they're going to need to know as they get older through, high school classes and college classes, is how to take ideas and organize those into a logical flow or to meet the expectations of a professor. So that type of organization can be really daunting. They're like, okay, well, I know a lot about this topic, but I'm not sure how to organize it.
Yeah. And especially if you're engaging ideas with other people, doing that organization and thought flow on the fly in real time is very challenging. And, that's more of an advanced skill, but that's kind of what we're working towards. I mean, think of it in the sense of, okay, we've got a second grader right now, but, hopefully maybe one day she's working for an engineering company and her boss comes in and says, what's the status on this project? And she can't just say, work week 32. It's like, no, she needs to make a coherent plan and talk
she
about
may
what's
need to
happening.
write a report.
And these are things, organizing these thoughts and putting them together in a thoughtful manner that makes sense, that is concise, that gets the point across to whoever, those are skills they eventually need to have in their professional lives in order to be clear and thoughtful and everything. So obviously we're working towards that, but those skills are hard to do, and that can be a lot of challenge at the beginning there. Next one we're talking about is short attention span. Obviously, their daddy watches a lot of YouTube shorts, aka the TikToks, and I got the short attention span. I got that problem.
I think it's just really challenging to focus for extended periods, especially for the younger ones and anyone who has a special learning needs. You're asking them to sit down and write something, especially if they're handwriting it or even if they're typing it. It could be a lot of time that they need to spend and focus on something, which can be a real challenge to get them to kind of sit there and give it their attention for that long.
Or, a lot of times with our young learners at this age, they tend to do something and then they complete it, right? It's very often we're doing tasks that are something that's completed within the 20 or 30 minute period, an art activity that's completed and finished. Very rarely are we asking them to come back to something. And sometimes with writing, we need to come back to it. We need to do editing, or we need to stop and we need to go back and do some more research and maybe come back tomorrow and continue writing. It's very rare do we actually have, projects that we are returning to over and over again, that we are massaging and reforming and working on. And I'm not saying like, oh yeah, my second grader is going to, reform a small paragraph or anything like that. But if we're thinking forward towards, 6th or 7th grade, 8th grade, they're going to have to return to their work over and over again. It's not something you're just going to do in one sitting.
Right. And while, a spelling errors don't matter in a nice, love note to mom or dad, like our daughter handed me earlier today, it certainly does matter when we're doing, explode the code and she's supposed to write a sentence. If it's spelled incorrectly, I'll ask her to go ahead and erase that and then write it correctly. And she's like, ugh.
Oh, I know.
Like the moment you ask her to get out the eraser.
Just one word, yeah.
Right. And sometimes you'll even write part of the sentence and she'll just have to fill in a couple of the vocab words, right, for spelling. It's like, okay, you do need to actually spell those right. It is a spelling curriculum, so we got to hold to some standard. But I think that one, it's extra effort, right, when they already put effort out into it. The other thing is that they're really resistant to any kind of feedback and they don't see the value in revising. And that's, I think that the feedback and revision part, probably at this age, they just don't want to do extra work. But when they're older, it's really because they've put a lot of effort and their own thoughts and feelings into what they wrote, and they're very sensitive about receiving any kind of critical feedback.
They have skin in the game at that point.
Right. Even if it's constructive feedback, I think it's really difficult for people in general.
Yes.
I mean, this happens at work all the time where people can't take constructive feedback. So, I mean, it's a tough skill to learn, but I think it's a great life skill that our kids need to cultivate. And seeing that, hey, through constructive feedback, this work of writing gets better. So showing them that there is value to that, because when they don't see that there's any value, then they're like, "Ugh, you're just making me redo this for no reason."
Yeah.
And that can be really demotivating.
Well, and that goes right into the next one where there is a lack of motivation, where they don't see the importance of writing. Like if they see the editing process being like, I don't see any purpose in this. They may not even see any purpose in the act of writing.
Well, right.
Why? I could just tell you.
Yeah.
Or,
You know that I know this. We had a whole conversation about this topic that we're learning about. Why do I have to write it down? The next issue definitely can be the performance pressure. So it's having really high expectations from themselves or from parents, right? Sometimes we might have expectations that are too high for them, especially as they get older. And you know that your child has a lot to say and they can be really articulate, and then you want them to just kind of get that down, record that, whether you're typing or writing it out with handwriting. You have expectations of them and they feel that pressure. So, and they feel the pressure themselves. Maybe it's not pressure to be perfect necessarily, but they still feel like, I think that this adds to that writer's block, right? That indecision. I'm not sure what to write next. And I think part of that comes from that pressure. One of the things Jeannie talked about was that free writing so that they wouldn't feel that. So I think pressure definitely is, kind of part of this.
Well, and going with that pressure, I know I fall into it as the educator a lot of times where I don't understand how, it seems easy to me, and I'm an older, adult and stuff. And I just forget how much time I had to spend learning all these skills. And I think I lose a little of that perspective because I just go, oh, this is easy. This is simple.
Right. And I don't remember how much I didn't enjoy this when I was in elementary school.
I don't remember the 10 years of composition work that got me to the point of being able to write a college essay. Yeah. Right. Like I just forgot about that. And I just see like now I'm like, yeah, I could write 2 pages of no big deal. But it's like, I'm 40. It's I forget about this. It's like, well, why don't you get this math stuff? And be like, well, not everybody went and got a physics degree, young man. It's like,
it's hard to put ourselves back in their shoes. And that can sometimes be difficult with reading too, where we have a difficult time understanding, where they're at. So, So these are some common problems that, we've identified that you might experience with your learners. So keep an eye out for these. But we have some suggestions for you, which hopefully can help you address some of these. The first one, and most importantly, is to try to make writing fun. Now, no one is saying that essay that they need to write for upper level high school English is going to be fun. But as much as we can, especially, giving them this good foundation through elementary school, try to incorporate enjoyable writing activities. This is like storytelling, making comics or graphic novels, writing about their interests. Maybe they want to make up their whole world for D&D and their whole storylines. Maybe they really want to do like a diary or a journal. That could be every day. They could do daily gratitudes. They could do writing with a photo album. Like I just made that photo album for our trip to Ireland, and I wrote every day what we did and then had pictures.
Fun writing prompts. Like if you get some, ideas. So we talked a little, we had our AI episode.
Right. They can come up with some super cool, maybe something funny, that makes them laugh. Yeah. Some silly topic that you could have the AI write. That we talked about having a pen pal, like our daughter has a couple of pen pals. That's a really fun way to write, as long as they don't write letters that are too long. The other cool idea is writing letters to like their heroes or people that they look up to. There was a really fun activity one time. I think maybe this was for your 30th birthday. You're a really huge Red Wings fan. And so I went to the card shop and I got all of these Red Wings cards for the different players. And I wrote a letter, handwritten letter to each player and said that my husband is the biggest fan and he's turning 30. And if you could sign this card, it would really mean a lot to him. Now, I was just, like an adult. I didn't hold a lot of sway, and we still got like 6 of them back. So kids can do really well. And all you do is write the letter with the card in it or whatever.
Self-addressed envelope
and
back.
Yeah, put a little, like a small self-addressed envelope back with a stamp on it, and then put that all in a larger envelope and just mail it to the stadium. Mm-hmm. So I just mailed it to Joe Louis Arena, and lo and behold, now it took like a year, but we got cards back in the mail that were signed from these players. Yeah. And it was really, and you were so surprised on your birthday that I had like all of these signed cards and this whole story. So if your kids have somebody that they really look up to, write letters to them. Ask them to sign something for them, a picture or whatever it is. It's a really fun activity, and we had a really good time with it.
Also, another fun thing to do is the idea of fan fiction.
Oh yeah, that's great.
It's such a great thing because they're engaging with their literature and they can build off their favorite, whatever it might be. They can even build off fan fiction not just for books, but also maybe a favorite movie. Maybe there was a movie that they loved.
Oh, sure.
A Star Wars movie or something like that, and they wanted to write a small side quest for Luke or something like that.
What happens in the next edition of the Disney movie? What should Frozen 3 be about? Exactly. Right? Have them write anything. If it interests them, at this point, there's no bad writing.
Yep.
If it's something that they're interested in, then go for it. It could be a nature journal. They could be, maybe they want to do something like writing poetry or something. Mm-hmm. But even if it's something just totally fun like comics, go for it. Make writing fun.
Absolutely. And kind of blended with a lot of those ideas is providing choice and allowing your writer, your learner to write what they want and get into that space of, opening the doors. And we know sometimes like if you just give them the open door, they don't know where to go. And so maybe you can provide them some ideas, and then once they get comfortable enough, and you can then say, hey, write what you want. They go, oh yeah, I want to write my Minecraft story, or I want
to write a choose your own adventure.
Yeah, I love Polly Pockets, and Polly Pocket stories are the best, and all this type of stuff, right? Whatever it might be, let them do what they want to do, and go with them, and almost treat it like almost unschooly in some respects.
Yeah.
Whatever they like to do, and then meet them where they're going, and kind of like they're going on a jog, and you're running with them, and then feed them some other ideas and help them maybe generate different types of content or whatever it might be. It doesn't always have to be a short story. Sometimes it could be a haiku about your favorite player or whatever it might be. Really engage them and where their interests are.
Right. And this is not to say that if your curriculum calls out that they need to do some copy work or that they should write a small answer to something, that they shouldn't do those things, right? I mean, do those things that you want to do for your curriculum, but make sure that there's enough fun writing in there, enough open-ended writing without expectations that they can just develop a love for getting their ideas out. I have a friend who was kind of processing some difficult things. She went through a miscarriage, and then she was thinking about leaving her job, and she just needed to process a lot of emotions. And no matter how much she talked to her husband or talked to me or thought about things, she couldn't process them. She actually needed to write, and she wrote a couple of really wonderful personal essays about how she felt. And she said, I just needed them to process my emotions. And I think that's something that really kids can use writing to help process their emotions. And that open-ended writing, if they can discover a love of kind of getting their ideas out on paper, then they can use that as a tool for the rest of their lives if they need to, if that's through a nightly journal so that they can process what happened during the day or the things that they're worried about. I kept a journal when I was pregnant, and because I had anxieties, and I was
just thinking about that.
Yeah. And I wanted to write down the things I was worried about to having this baby, because I never had a baby. And
to think about how our oldest tends to process emotions. I have a feeling she's going to be engaging in like the journaling and the diary. I think that's going to be a big thing for her. Yeah.
I have a feeling, because it's a really powerful way to make you kind of think deeper about how you feel. And that's a big part of things in therapy too, is to write stuff down. And to really get that stuff out of your head and onto paper. So the earlier we can encourage our kids to have this free-form writing time without expectations, where they can put down what makes them happy or what they feel they need to say, the better.
Next thing is to model writing yourself. to demonstrate writing, read stories or pieces that have been written by others that inspire you. Read your favorite things, like read your favorite short stories, or read books that you remember as a child that you really enjoyed, and you'll reread them, and as an adult, you'll rethink the things that you enjoyed. We've done that a bunch of times where we like watch a movie from our childhood and we go, wow, that was really bad. Like Ninja Turtles.
Right. That did not hold up well.
The original Ninja Turtles, we watched it and we were, our kids loved it because it's whatever.
It was
but
terrible.
We were watching it going, this is really bad.
This is really, our parents sat through this. Yeah, it's totally true. And if you have anything that you wrote as a child, we both have some things that are saved from when we were kids. Our kids love to read the stuff that we did when we were kids.
I should read in my latest book.
Yeah, let's not. No nightmares. Nightmares for kids.
World War I zombie book, That sounds fun.
So the next one is to, encourage creativity, right? So emphasizing writing that is a way to express our thoughts and our feelings and our imagination without worrying about that perfection. So I think that's the important part of this, without the perfection. And encourage your kids to put whatever they're thinking or feeling down on paper, and that no one's going to read this.
Yeah,
it's
right.
just private. It's just for them. Encourage them to be silly, to write something scary or exciting or sad or, whatever they want to write.
Well, one of the funny things that I remember, I remember distinctly, I was in 10th grade and we got offered the opportunity in English class to analyze some type of work. And most people, just chose random poetry and whatnot. But I chose a Pink Floyd song, Sheep. And I it's a long song. It's like 10 minutes long. I'll put it in the show notes. It's a great song. And I was analyzing the lyrics of it, and I had to go and do some research on what did it mean and where did it come from? And I gave this essentially this presentation about the importance of the song and everything. And I knew my teacher was kind of like, he was like all over. He loved Pink Floyd. And he was the only one in there. He's like almost shaking. He's like, yeah, this is amazing. I love this. Everybody else was snoozing. But I remember deep inside, and remember when I did that, I loved that music. I loved analyzing the song.
Yeah.
And it was something that was really engaging. And I went over and above what I would normally do. I tended to be like a kid who, I could go higher, but I never went higher. I kind of like stayed at like the B+ range. I could go A, but I just didn't want to, type of thing. But sometimes I would get interest into something and I would get the A+, right? And this was a good example of that, where I got to engage in something and give a talk or write an essay or analyze a piece of work that was just something that was special to me. And I remember that very distinctly. And I remember my teacher saying, he goes, I was really impressed by, it seemed like you wanted to do this.
Yeah.
And it does, I think it does prove the difference there.
Yeah. When you're really into something, it makes 100% of the difference.
Yeah. Especially when you're encouraging that creativity, it's a whole nother level.
When the spark takes off, it's just wonderful. So the next thing too is to offer support. So this is where, you've got kids who are worried about spelling and grammar. So provide assistance with that. If it's not a test on spelling, then help them out so that it doesn't dampen their love of writing because of spelling.
Jeannie talked about that, right? Is like, if it's not meant to be a grammar thing, don't let grammar hinder the activity.
Right, because then it's just going to stifle their ideas. They're going to hate writing. And for younger kids who don't have the writing stamina, really consider scribing or doing, speech to text. And we're going to talk about that too in a future episode. So think about what you can do for your kids. Right now, we scribe for our daughter, and she comes up with these super elaborate stories.
She would never be able to write those.
Never. She would never write that much. And so I think that scribing is great for us. We type so quickly. It's like not that much of a chore. And I think that because she knows that there aren't any bounds, her imagination just kind of runs away, which is awesome.
Another idea maybe possibly for you is to celebrate effort. This is something that we're starting to get into. We're realizing with our oldest that she loves to accomplish things. I think she maybe gets a little bit of that from me, like being able to tick things off and saying I'm finished with something, even though she may not be 100% done with it. Maybe that's more my flow.
Yeah, that's a you thing.
That's a me thing.
That's like 80% done. I'm done.
But she loves, like, we've been doing the reading challenges this summer. She's been loving it. And that's really been pulling her reading up. And I can almost imagine, celebrating her writing efforts through a writing chart or a writing, a sequence of writing challenges that she may have. And then, producing something at the end that's, tremendous, like, for what she was doing.
Absolutely. I think it's one of those things where, they say when kids bring you art that you're not supposed to say, oh, that's beautiful, because not everything is, and you don't want to just praise everything. Whatever they turn in is fabulous, right? Because it's not authentic. And
You don't love our 4-year-old's orange heads with the arms and the legs?
I do, actually.
Yeah, I
because
do.
Instead, you're supposed to say, I can see that you worked really hard on that. I can see it's really special to you.
You did a lot of hard work on
You did a lot of hard work on that. And I think that it's a much better way to praise. And so for writing too,
Praise the process.
Right? I can see how much effort you put. I can see the progress. I can see how you've improved. Let's look at your writing. Let's go back to our records box and let's look at your writing from last year and let's see how much you have improved, because wow, look at your handwriting and look at how much longer it is and how much more detailed the ideas are and the words, and really not looking for perfection, but progress. We want to make sure that our kids are always making progress.
Absolutely. Next idea is creating a writing area, whether that is a computer area if you have an older writer who's learning to type, or if you have a younger writer who's maybe starting to do journaling, or having a simple notebooks, or having notebooks everywhere and pencils everywhere, that any moment there's an idea that they can start to do something with the notebook. Also modeling that with your learner as well. Like if I tend to, in my backpack, I have actually a notebook that I write in when I go to my meetings and stuff like that. I tend to not take notes on the computer. I like to handwrite the notes now. If you're somebody who wants to just put a little notebook in your pocket and just write things down and model that, have your learner write down the shopping, with the shopping list for the day, and then have it cross it out during.
Yeah, that's always really fun.
That's always like ways to engage your learner and actually doing writing that is more practical.
Right.
Something that is a little bit more of a day-to-day need. Like you can actually just build that experience through whether it's technology or having the writing tools or having like a writing space.
Right. Maybe it's a really comfortable beanbag chair or something they like to write in. Maybe they, I know our daughter's going to be one that she'd totally be willing to do a journal when she gets a little older. But if it's not an attractive, sparkly colored thing, she's not going to want anything to do with it.
She's going to have the one that has all the frills and the pink and the pink fuzz all over.
Oh yeah. So maybe your child needs the right kind of tools too. The younger they are, they need the bulkier pencils like the My First Ticonderogas. You can even get the triangle shaped pencils. Maybe they need the like pencil grip things to help them. You want to just reduce material barriers to writing, that there's paper available and whatever implements they need, that the space is inviting. Make sure that you're easing that path to writing.
Absolutely. Next thing is technology. Last Thursday we talked about speech to text. We're going to be talking about text to speech, using technology to help ease the composition, ease the thought, producing the thinking, the actual act of writing. I think one of the best things about Jeannie's interview, and if you haven't had a chance, go back and check that interview out. She really kind of dispelled the idea in my mind that writing is a writing act, like
a handwriting
act, or a typing thing. And she really helped me understand that it's more than just the act of writing. It's the act of thinking, because writing is a physical act of thinking, and organizing thoughts and putting that in, cultivating a mindset. Yeah.
Recording what's coming out of your brain.
Exactly.
Right?
And I never really had that two things connect. And she was really, really helped me understand that. And at least with respect to, how I'm going to work with my daughters and helping cultivate their love of writing. They see me writing, periodically, and they'll see me doing some writing sprints or something like that, and they don't bother me and stuff. So maybe they'll model that. But I really having the idea of divorcing the idea of handwriting or typing, and seeing that it's more than just that.
Right. Handwriting practice is its own deal.
Yep.
Just like spelling is its own time, and isn't, because otherwise you might be taking these things that are real chores and hindering their ability to get their thoughts out on paper.
Next one is making writing social. Engaging writing. Whether it's sharing letters with your grandparents, or writing a blog or something when they get older, or writing competitively, if they're like submitting, things to
Sure.
journals, or writing in tandem with other writers. Like if they want to do like a poetry corner and they're working together.
Oh, that could
Or
be fun. Or
going-
write a short story and then, read it to
yeah,
grandma or
exactly,
whatever. I
yeah.
mean, it could be just the really small stuff.
And you can scale that depending on where your learner is. Like if they're older, maybe they can go to a critique group. If they're younger, they're writing stuff to grandma, right?
Right. Yeah.
Whatever it might be, you can scale that along wherever your learner is.
Right. Our daughter loves to read her stuff to the grandparents. That's like her favorite audience. And that's another group to coach too about how to give that constructive praise that, helps them and not say, oh, that's perfect. Oh, it's the best thing I've ever heard, but is real and authentic. Like, wow, you put a lot of effort into that.
Exactly.
I can see how important that was to you.
Yeah. Encouraging reading, I think, is another one. And then
This is a huge one.
Yeah.
Getting good readers make good writers.
Mhm.
And if they love reading and they fall in love with hearing stories, then it's a lot easier to take that leap to want to tell stories.
Exactly. And then also, if they are interested, as your learner gets a little bit older, if they're interested in a certain type of writing medium, whether it's an essay form or reading the news, and they're into journalism, or they're into poetry and analyzing songs, or if they want to write short stories and fan fiction, whatever it might be, bring that type of content into your homeschool,
Right.
and encourage that to be a piece of what you do on a daily basis. It's like, okay, well, if your son or daughter likes to write poems, you're going to have to do a lot more poetry, reading and analyzing and watching videos on how to analyze poetry, or, learning about different aspects of poetry. And
Maybe take them to a poetry reading.
Exactly. And teaching, the various structures of poetry, and understanding that it's more than just putting your emotions down onto paper, that there is, there's scaffolding there, that authors or poets who are composing things are actually, doing things in a very deliberate manner, or they're using a certain type of style or whatever it might be, that there's more to just, writing what you think in your mind and giving it a little bit more weight to it. Like it's not just driving a car, but learning how to change the oil as well. I think the last thing that we want to push is to start small. And that's true about everything.
Yeah.
I think Jeannie had a really good point in the interview that we had last week, where she said, writing starts before they can write.
Yeah.
Right. And that's so true. And it's funny how we were kind of asking her all these questions, because we were thinking about, okay, in the next couple of years, we're going to have to be doing homeschool curriculums for writing and all this stuff. And right off the bat, she like cut my legs off, and I'm like sitting there in a pile of goo. And I'm just like, I didn't even think about that, good writing starts when she was 4 years old.
Right. The moment they started playing imaginative games, that's when good writing started. I think that was just a really insightful part of Jeannie's interview. The one other thing from Jeannie's interview that I think was really impactful to me, that I think should go on this list, is the idea of free writing. So, we talked about, like, you don't have to worry about the spelling and grammar right away when they're young. You don't want to stifle their writing. Well, eventually, right? The spelling and grammar is important, and it does need to get corrected when they're going to go forward with writing, right? We want them to be successful, college students, successful adults. And so she said, rather than, limit herself or her kids, she did this with all her kids. So, just let them free write. Write whatever comes into their mind without it needing to follow a certain structure, without worrying about spelling, without worrying about grammar. Just get all those ideas out on paper and then go back and revise and clean up organization and clean up spelling and grammar and, really tighten that up. And in the process, one, they've gotten their ideas out, right? Without getting stumbling over grammar, stumbling over organization. Oh, I shouldn't put that here. That should be in the first paragraph because that was the introduction. I shouldn't do it here, Instead, they got everything out there. And then you're also showing them the value of the revision process.
Exactly.
So I think that free writing is a really good note. And I need to remember that. It's not quite as applicable for the really young ones, but definitely for those, 5th, 6th graders, or you've got that are really reluctant to write, just get it all out there first.
Well, and also another thing that, kind of came into my mind as you were talking about that is, when I'm coaching basketball, when the type of feedback that I'm giving as like a mentor and as a coach is different based on where I am with that player. Like if I'm in practice, I'm correcting more because we are practicing and we are in a practicing mindset and we are trying to improve ourselves. If we're in the game, I'm trying to get them to do a couple things that I know are going to improve the way they're playing. And I'm keeping it very small, and I'm just saying the same thing over and over. And I'm trying to encourage them to do that one or two things. I'm trying to strip away a lot of the fear. You get like a player who starts to shut down because they don't know what's going on and they don't know what to do and whatnot. Instead, I just go, okay, listen, you just have to stay with your player. I don't care if it's offense or defense. Forget about everything else. Just do those things. And so like the way I critique is different in different situations. And I think that's going to apply here as I'm starting to teach writing, is that depending on where I am, where the learner is, whether they're writing whether they're in the act of writing or in the act of planning, or we're in critiquing and revising, or if I'm encouraging, I'm using different tactics and tools and a lot of these different ideas that I can imagine seeing these ideas. I'm having to use them in different situations,
Right.
and apply them at the right time. And it doesn't mean if I apply the wrong one at the wrong time, it's going to fail and everything, the wheels will fall off.
Yeah.
But, I need to be thoughtful in that respect, like I am on the basketball court, about where, having to manage 8 kids and all the 8 emotions, and the fact that there's 50 parents and grandparents and everyone here, and there's another 50 opponents, and there's another 8 kids on the other side of the court and everything. And everybody has all these emotions, and we're having to manage all these things, and really thinking about how you want to apply these tools and the tricks and finding the little problems and managing the little problems. And I see a lot of analogous behavior or actions that I'm going to have to do with the way I have to coach on the basketball court. And
Right. And as a parent educator, you are a coach.
Yeah.
And you are kind of like looking at, this is the situation now. So I've got a student who is having this specific struggle. I've asked them to write a poem and they're shutting down. Okay, you know what? We're going to go and read a ton of poems and give you lots of ideas. And then you just write whatever comes to your mind. And, then we'll go back and revise it, whatever it is. Okay. So these are all just some ideas. These are some common problems you might see, and just some thoughts, some things to try, some tools in your tool belt. And maybe you come across and be like, oh yeah, maybe I'll trust. Yeah. Go ahead and write that comic book. That sounds great. You want to write a D&D world or the perfect description of the character you want to build in your video game? Okay, great.
Let's do it. And what do you need from me in order to do that? Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, let's plan it out and think about it, and let's execute. Yeah. There's so many creative ways. And it's kind of funny. Like my mindset going into this whole thing was, I just need to find the good curriculum. And now I'm starting to think it just like it opened up the door, and there's so many opportunities that it almost feels limitless.
Not that maybe a writing curriculum is the right answer for some folks, and it might be the right answer for us in the future.
It might be a piece of what we need to do, right? And it's not the totality of what we're doing, but it might be a piece. Like, oh, we need a writing curriculum, and we need a reading curriculum, but also my daughter can read any book that she wants to read, right? Yeah, we don't have to be limited to just that.
Right, exactly.
Well, this was great. I think this was a good episode. I really enjoyed it. Please feel free to start any threads you want on our Facebook group. We want to really try to engage everybody this month as we kind of like talk about different writing ideas and writing topics. We're going to be doing little short bites. We know we had the one
near and dear to Matt's heart.
Well, it is. It's something that I've taken up.
You love to write.
Well, it's something that I've kind of come into over the last 8 years or so since I've been a stay-at-home dad. It's been something I've always wanted to do, and now that I have the time, well, I don't have any time to do it now, but it was something that I kind of engaged in. It was fun and kind of reinvigorating my love for books that I had when I was younger, that I kind of lost through school, that I've refound here later in my life. It's become an important thing for me. So I have a lot of feels in that region around that. So it is an important thing for me, but I gotta have to make sure I balance my emotions. It's, my kids may not want to write, maybe not be their thing,
Right.
I have to kind of protect myself on that one. But I have a feeling that at least our oldest will, I think she's going to be into the creative side.
Yeah, I think she's going to
that.
be into the emotion processing writing. I have a feeling.
Analyzing Tay-Tay songs.
She
and
has
stuff,
she has a lot of big feelings and a lot of thoughts. And I think once she feels comfortable getting them, being able to read well enough and write well enough to get them down, I'm sure she's going to use that. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, we hope this is helpful for you and your learners, and definitely start a discussion if you're encountering some other writing challenge or you have some other thoughts. Let's all, contribute to this community and make it the best thing we can. Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time.
Happy homeschooling!